How's it going, everyone? This is your Astrology Horoscope for Monday, August 19th, 2024. I'm astrologer Alex Skyles, and welcome to the Moon Base. Hope you guys are doing great. It's good to be here with all of you on this very action-packed full moon in Aquarius, which is very significant. There's so many significant aspects going on as this full moon is occurring here on Monday morning. So Monday afternoon for some, and some in Europe, Monday evening. So Venus just comes off of its opposition to Saturn. Venus is now starting to make its exact square to Mars, right after this Mars-Jupiter conjunction that we just had. So relationships are a massive theme with this full moon here. And of course, yesterday we just had the Mercury Sun Cazimi here in Leo. Mercury, Virgo, Gemini, very heavily involved with this full moon here. There's a big message with this full moon. Okay, there's a big message coming through connected to our self-worth and our value, our financial life, the responsibilities in life, our relationship with ourself, our relationship with our soul, our spirit, our relationship with our physical body. This Venus and Virgo opposing Saturn and Pisces. Just off of its opposition with this full moon here, and now starting to make it square to Mars. So we have to really look at things objectively during this full moon. We have to look at our relationships. We have to look at the connections in our personal life, the people that we're connected to, Aquarius, our friends, the people that we're emotionally connected to, this full moon in Aquarius. It's like the emotional connection. Is there an emotional connection, or is it emotionally disconnected? And I think there can be an emotional disconnection if relationships and friendships and any sort of partnerships here with Venus opposing Saturn, if it's not healthy, if it's in that toxic loop that I think in modern culture nowadays has just become such a thing. It's like a normal sort of thing. You see it all over the internet. It's like this Venus and Virgo opposing Saturn is trying to help us filter out this toxicity, and this full moon in Aquarius wants to end these cycles. And it's like where we feel disconnected and then we fall into these toxic patterns because we don't even feel connected. So Mercury is like, it really wants to make this connection, and it really wants to say out loud. It's like, okay, this is where I am connected, and this is where I feel disconnected. And also, too, with Venus getting ready to square Mars, it's like we have to really keep pushing forward in a neutral way and not get attached to the emotion so we can keep pushing forward. But also, too, it's like Mars just came off of its square to Saturn. So, with the messes that's what I've been feeling as Venus has been transiting through Virgo. It's like Venus has been this kind of cleanup in our relationship life. It's been sort of a cleanup or a filtration system opposing Saturn, where it's like, I don't like this. I don't like this about myself. I don't like this about my environment. I don't like this about the relationship. We don't see things the same way, right? It's like we're seeing the reality of a relationship from two different perspectives, and definitely that's coming up with this Mars Venus square. So that masculine and feminine energy, especially Venus in Virgo, it's like Venus and Virgo in its detriment. It's like, okay, it's everything's not always perfect. The relationship's not always perfect. So this is when the imbalances start to show up. And the lack of attention to detailing and prioritizing what's really important. This Mars and Gemini can get very distracted, and this Venus and Virgo is like very focused on what really matters. Virgo focuses on what really matters. Gemini gets very distracted. So it's like there could be this kind of distraction within relationships. There can be this distraction. We can become distracted with the external world, which is very Gemini, instead of really looking at our physical self, which is Virgo, right? We gotta really look at our physical well-being with this Venus-Mars square just off of the opposition square to Saturn. It's like we have to really keep our mental health, our physical health in check if we want to have these healthy relationships. If we want to increase our self-worth and our value in the world, which is where Venus and Saturn is trying to make an agreement, right? It's like, okay, it's like if we can take these steps and we can really stay on this path and be diligent and orderly and, follow through with the details, which Pisces has a hard time with, which Virgo draws those boundaries, so to say. So with this Venus opposition, with Mars too, it's like we have to set boundaries in our relationship. We have to set boundaries within our friendships, not just romantic partnerships. And two, like I think if we're really paying attention during this full moon with Aquarius, it's like the people we're really connected to and that we spend a lot of time with, or groups that we're involved in, there's very important messages coming through with Mercury just off of its conjunction with the sun. And this is Mercury retrograding across the sun, right where Venus retrograded last year. So relationships that fell apart last year during the Venus retrograde, any sort of financial issues that were happening during that Venus retrograde, things can start to get resolved, or people showing up again, right? Or unsaid or unsettled situations or conversations that, blew out of proportion. Now things can start to materialize in a more practical way, but it's like there's a lot of emotions that have to come from the heart and the head. It's like this full moon in Aquarius, it's like, okay, we've been in such a very passionate, intense emotional space through Leo season. And now this moon is like, okay, like we have to really assess the mental aspect of this whole Leo season with Mercury retrograding. We have to be able to mentalize some of these things, right? And Mercury in Leo wants to mentalize these things, but it's like Mercury in Leo, especially retrograde, it's like it puts the action first. It puts the heart first, which is great. But this moon in Aquarius, which to me Aquarius and Uranus, it is very similar to Mercury. Uranus and Aquarian energy to me is very similar to Mercury. It's more detached, it's more neutral. It's hard to really pinpoint. Is it masculine? Is it feminine? It's more neutral. It's very similar. It's like I've heard many astrologers talk about Mercury being Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, which I think is a pretty cool perspective and very accurate, I think. So, and here's the kicker. I've been saving this one, because this full moon is very much around our connections and our partnerships and our value and our self-worth. Venus is so heavy here, and our responsibilities, and of course, not being afraid to fucking just be yourself. With the Venus, or with the Sun, Mercury, Cazimi, and Leo retrograde, and this full moon, you don't want to. It's like, yeah, we have to integrate and connect with other people, but we don't want to just fall into groups and ideas that are not our own or we don't identify with. And we've seen that a lot, where people just fall into things where they don't necessarily identify with it, but, the herd of people are going in this direction and people just tag along. It's like, this is Chiron and Aries. It's that lack, especially retrograde, that lack of self-identity. So this full moon is really helping us, look at, the things that we're attached to and groups that we're attached to. It's like, I think this is a good opportunity to look at the things that we are attached to and say, am I attaching to that for my own purpose, or am I attaching to that for comfort out of feeling left out, right? It's like Leo doesn't care to if it feels left out. Leo's never left out. Leo's always going to do its own thing. Aquarius is like, I don't want to be left out. I want to be a part of this. It's like, yeah, where can we find our identity within the communities and the groups that we believe in, we support, right? It's like we all have to have our individual identity within the collective. And Pluto in Aquarius is going to be destroying and rebuilding and transforming what that really is in our society. And if we look back 250 years ago, you can see how that played out. So there's a similar progression here, right? As, of course, in the collective sphere of things, there's so much going on. And obviously, we're moving into one of the most intense periods that we've seen in a long time. Definitely these next few months are going to be really intense. So this full moon in Aquarius with Pluto getting ready to move back into Capricorn, it's like, this is it. This is the final swing of the exposure and the collapse and the, what this transformation is going to be of these old systems that are falling. It's like that old system has come to a head. It's been completely exposed, right? Of course, and that's what this is. It's like that whole system has been completely exposed. Okay. Where people's opinions stood 10 years ago is much different than it is now. Okay, even 4 or 5 years ago, 2020, it's like everything's so much different, right? So this full moon, I really think, is going to be making the collective look at. It's like, wow, like I've really been attached to this idea or this group or this cause or this humanitarian idea, and I thought it was a good thing. It's like, Mercury coming into contact with the sun is lighting up that truth. And of course, with this Mars coming off of Jupiter, it's like the push forward towards what the truth and the facts really are. There's so much more once Pluto comes back into Capricorn that's going to be exposed. And Mars is definitely helping the truth and the facts get put out in a big way. But there's also a challenge. It's like people awakening to their own biases, which is Aquarius. It's like you get caught in your bias, right? Your mental cognitive bias. And Mercury opposing this full moon too. It's like, man, we have to release any of those false beliefs or ideas that limit us from being that full Leo self. And in being able to speak from that raw, authentic place. And Mercury retrograding in Leo, of course, it's like, it's crossing those same degrees that Venus went retrograde last year. So it's like, you have to look at your relationship life too. It's like, with Venus opposing Saturn during this full moon, it's like in our relationships, like there has to be an agreement that has to be made, right? And it's like, there has to be boundaries in relationships that need to be set. They're definitely, with this Mars, Jupiter, and Gemini squaring Saturn and Venus, like boundaries have been crossed, okay? So setting those boundaries, having healthy boundaries, having personal boundaries too, with your own self and the world. That's what Virgo is about, especially opposing Saturn. It's like we have to set physical boundaries for our individual being in our body and, of course, to the world and to the ether. But here's the kicker with this full moon. So this full moon's happening at 27 degrees, right? This is a Uranian-ruled full moon in fixed signs, okay? Uranus, just coming into 27 degrees this week, is making almost an exact square just within minutes, creating a T-square to this full moon, to the sun, to Mercury, okay, to this full moon. So this is the real kicker, is that as much as relationships and our values and our self-worth have been tested by Saturn here, and especially with Mars and Jupiter, it's like, commitment is a big thing, with this T-square from Mars, Jupiter to Venus and Saturn. Like there's a lack of commitment. There's a lack of clarity here, okay, which in mutable signs, that's a challenge very often, This is with the fixed signs, it's much more, this is the way it fucking is, whether you like it or not. So there is going to be an abrupt change. There's going to be an abrupt shift here in our lives. There's going to be an abrupt awakening that can come through, whether it's only mental, right? It is this Mercury retrograde with the sun squaring Uranus to the full moon. It might not even be some radical physical shift, or some physical event that occurs. This could be a mental breakthrough, okay, where connections can be repaired connections can be repaired or new connections can be made. Because this is Uranus, and this full moon happening in a Uranian-ruled sign, with the full moon, being disposited by Uranus. There's a revolution that's happening. There internally, collectively, okay? This is going to move mountains. This full moon is going to really shift and shake shit up, okay? This could really shake up the financial system. We've already seen a lot of that playing out here as well. But now with Venus opposing Saturn, with Uranus and Taurus, okay? Venus dispositing Uranus. There can be some massive shifts in the financial system, collectively within the people. Okay, Aquarius, the people, Pluto in Aquarius, the people. So this full moon this is the last full moon that's going to happen before Pluto goes back into Capricorn. And how ironic is it that this full moon's in Aquarius while Pluto's in Aquarius right before it goes back into Capricorn? We're less than 15 days away. Or 13 days. 13, 14 days. So, from Pluto coming back into Capricorn. So this full moon, this is a big trigger. This square on this full moon is happening exactly at 27 degrees with Uranus. There's going to be some massive shakeups. Okay, we may see wild weather. We may see some fires break out, especially with Leo here. Okay, we could see some wild stuff pop off in the world even more. Or the financial systems kind of go a little haywire, right? On a personal level, this is massive mental breakthroughs, okay? Especially with Uranus and Taurus. The challenge with Uranus and Taurus, since it's been here since 2018, is it's you get stuck in a routine, you get stuck in a pattern, things become monotonous and mundane, and all of a sudden, Uranus is oh, sorry, bam. Now you got to make a change. Now you have to make a sudden shift in your life, and it may be uncomfortable at first, but it ends up being the right thing, and it can be a revolution or a revelation in your life, right? So we're seeing a revolution in the world, okay? We are in the same transit with Pluto, with the American and French Revolution. So we are having a revolution globally. We are having an internal, individual revolution. Aquarius in Leo is the individual and the collective. There is an individual and collective revolution that's happening. Of course, we ain't seen shit with technology yet. Okay, let's just be clear about that. Everyone's freaking out about technology and AI is going to take over, and that's great. I find great use from a lot of the technology nowadays. I wouldn't be able to share this video without just very useful technologies, but we ain't seen shit yet until Uranus comes into Gemini. After Uranus comes out of Taurus here and trines Pluto, the world will not look the same at all. So, and it is this year. I mean, we could go back to 2020 and look at that trigger point with the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction on the South Node. That was a massive trigger point and a massive turning point here. We've had a few of those over the past year, but 2024 has had many moments like that just within 8 months. So this full moon here, is definitely ending a massive cycle collectively. It's ending a massive cycle individually, okay? And it's definitely ending some patterns in relationships, especially that are connected to the subconscious that we're not awakened to, and our self-worth, is increasing, and our value can be increased as long as we're willing to listen to Saturn with this opposition to Venus, because that's what we really want. We want to keep increasing our value, keep increasing our worth, and have that be acknowledged in the world. And of course, with Capricorn, it's like that acknowledgement. We want to be acknowledged for our hard work and our input. So, and that's Saturn and Capricorn. So I think all in all, with this full moon, as intense as it's going to be, because this is a Uranian Aquarian full moon, you gotta learn how to ride the wave, because I think we've gotten many good lessons already in 2024 of how to really ride these intense waves. But it's like, these aren't Neptunian waves that are coming through. These are like electromagnetic Uranian waves that are coming through. This is, this is a frequency shift, a frequency upgrade. And when we're talking about Uranus and Aquarius, we're talking about frequency. We're talking about electricity. We're talking about the interconnectedness of how frequency operates, right? And the boundaries of frequency. How far can it go? It's like, well, our perception only goes from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So, we always hear about, we're having a consciousness upgrade. We're going from 3D to 4D to 5D. It's like, maybe it's not external. It's internal, right? It's like our consciousness is evolving towards a more objective perspective. I think social media has a big part of that, because, social media, you can really see people's patterns, right? Their behavior patterns through social media. So there is this objective kind of fourth dimensional upgrade. And we're really going to see that here with this full moon Aquarius, Aquarian full moon, with Pluto at the last moment before it comes back into Capricorn for these next few months. There is this big collective shift in this full moon with Uranus making a T-square to the full moon, to Mercury, to the sun. There's going to be a massive collective shift and a really intense upgrade that can really shift how people are coming together. And we've seen it just over these past few weeks. After that Mars-Uranus conjunction, it was like, it's Uranus, it's the groups. We saw shifts in groups. It's like, okay, now I'm on this side, right? Now I'm on this team. Now I'm with this person. We're going to see that again with this full moon. We're going to see another big shift, okay? And once Pluto comes back into Capricorn, we're going to see another big power grab, another big power movement, whatever that's going to be. So with this full moon in Aquarius, we got the Three of Cups. So it's like, we can't do things alone, right? Like when we really put our heads together, there is power within that, right? It's like we are not complete when we're alone, right? It's like, what's the Leo without the audience, right? It's like we have to stay unified. We have to stay connected and open, and we have to keep communicating openly and honestly and sharing things on the internet. It's like we have to stay unified, and I think if we could stay unified and not let any of this crazy projection, this Neptune projection that's coming through. Okay, Neptune rules screens, right? It's like staying connected and staying honest and staying true, because that is kind of the battle that's going on right now with these mutable signs. It's like, you got to be very clear with your words. You have to be very concise. People can misinterpret things very easily, or it's very easy to skew or misconstrue people's words and perspectives with these mutable shifts right now. And Venus will oppose Neptune here in the next week and a half. So when it comes to our values, our relationships, the people that we're attracted to, our creative projects, what we want to manifest in the world, there's a reality check. And I think in the spiritual community too, it's like, it's really cool to see that the spiritual community, and as far as I could see, and of course there is a split in the astrology and the spiritual community where there is a lot of real people out there doing a lot of real good shit, you know, and being themselves and just expressing how they feel in their perspective of whatever mediums that they are using and sharing, you know. But there's also a lot of fluff. Okay, so at this point, with the way things are kind of divided, which it wasn't always this way, you know, I remember growing up, things weren't always this way, you know. In families and friendships, collectively, you know, it's all different. The dynamic is totally shifted. So this Aquarian Uranian energy is really going to be shifting that over these next few months. And definitely once we're coming into 2025, there's going to be a big, big revolution that's going to be taking place internally as individuals, a mental transformation, a psychological transformation, right? Of like realizing like, wow, like this is the world that we're a part of, right? Aquarius is the world. It's the world card. And us having an unconscious awakening. Pluto is the unconscious, right? Aquarius is the collective. Pluto is also the collective unconscious, a collective unconscious awakening. So with this Aquarius full moon, I just find it so interesting that Pluto moves back into Capricorn for just a few months, September 1st, okay? And this full moon, right before that happens, is in Aquarius, which is really, really interesting, with Uranus making a T-square. And it just makes me think about the last new moon and full moon cycle we had, right? We had those 2 full moons of Capricorn with that new moon in Cancer in between, you know, and the whole conversation was like, oh, like this is really like triggering that Pluto 29-degree Capricorn area. So this is those Capricorn full moons were alluding to Pluto coming back into Capricorn, but now this full moon is alluding to these final moments with Pluto and Aquarius before it comes back into Capricorn, but also alluding to Pluto coming back into Aquarius in January. So this full moon is going to be really exciting and exhilarating for us individuals as people doing the good work, you know, doing the spiritual work. So it's like, at the same time, we could definitely see some extreme things take place in the world as this week plays out. We have all these fixed and mutable squares with outer planets that are fucking really wild. So there's a lot of tension coming into this week with this full moon, but also potential for massive breakthroughs and revolutions, which have been building up all of 2024. So we're going to see that play out this week. So hope you guys have a great full moon. Happy Monday and have a great week. And I will see you on Tuesday. Peace out.